Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, and I am very excited tonight to be joined by three people that I work with all the time behind the scenes and who are some of my favorite funny people to work with. I think you're going to be in for a treat tonight. So we're going to have our Penguin Random House sales reps joining us for their fall recommendations, the books that they are most excited about. And I think it's mostly tailored to crime novels for our audience. They're all going to be taking turns talking about their various books. But for those of you who don't know how this works, they come to the store, they visit me, they tell me all about the things that are coming up in about 6 months or so, and we order those books. So they are super knowledgeable. I trust them for recommendations. And again, I think you're in for a treat. I am going to put a link in the comments shortly once they start. It's going to have a list of all the titles they're going to discuss. So if you don't want spoilers, don't click there. But you can order the books that they're going to be talking about. Some of them are out, some of them are pre-orders. And like I said, I'll put that link in the comments shortly. So in no particular order, I'm going to go ahead and bring them on. So we're joined tonight. Our Penguin rep is Brian Contine. Hi, Brian.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
Good. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to hear about your picks. We also have Emily Smolarek, who is one of our Random House reps. Hi, Emily.
Hello.
And the troublemaker of the crew, Liz Sullivan, also a Random House rep. She's got an acerbic sense of humor, so be prepared, guys. The other fun part of the evening is how all three of these people work together all the time. So you're going to be in for a treat with their kind of internal jabs and jokes, I'm sure. I'm going to go away as we present. John is behind the scenes with slides about the books that they're talking about, and we'll also put some extra information, whether it's signed copies or event information, things like that, to go along with the books in the comments. So just make sure to check the comments or the live chat. If you have any questions, we may be able to open it up to questions later, so don't be shy. We'll try to get to those also. I'm going to leave it to the three of you now. Have fun.
Great. So the first book of the night is We Were Never Here by Andrea Bartz. This just went on sale, and it's actually a Reese Witherspoon book club pick, which is pretty exciting for the author. This is her third thriller, and all of them are fantastic. It's very scary. The main character, her name is actually Emily as well. She's gone on a trip with her best friend, Kristen. They're in Chile, and Kristen kills a backpacker in self-defense. What's really strange, really strange about this is this has happened before on an earlier trip in Cambodia. From there, they go back home, and Emily is very unsure about what happened, very unsettled. And the mind games begin between them. Kristen moves back to the same city, and it's a very manipulative, strange friendship. You'll be guessing what's real, what's lie, what are all the lies until the very end. And it's just a very fun read about travel going horribly wrong.
My last trip was with Brian's family, and I'm not saying he stabbed another backpacker, but I mean,
we did light a chair on fire, and that
we
was
did
all,
light a
that
chair
was
on
fun.
fire.
That's a story for another day. Yes. So I'm going to start out with a debut, one that should be hitting the shelves. If it's not on the shelves right now, it should be there in a day or two. This is The Night Singer by Johanna Moe from out of Sweden. Super exciting debut. It's a police procedural, a woman-driven police procedural from this super cool Swedish community with a super cool heroine. It centers on Detective Hannah Dunker. She's returning home to a small town called Åland. She left the small town following her father's murder conviction, so sort of she left in shame, but now she's back and she has a new job with the local police and has a super nosy partner that's kind of cool too. Her homecoming is made even more complicated by a murder investigation of a 15-year-old who was found dead. This has a super ton of French feel to it, a little bit of a Derville and McTiernan. I think this is the start of something new. I think that this might be the last time we see her in the trade paperback format. I bet she's going to go straight to hardcover next time. So you get sort of an introductory price with her, which is a cool thing. And you can't see it there. Maybe you can. Your screens might be bigger than mine. But the cover is really cool in person. And I dig this one. I can't wait to read what she does next.
And my first book to talk about is The Perfume Thief. And I love this. It's historical fiction set in Paris just as the Nazis are coming to occupy the city. But the main characters are all in sort of the underworld, and they're in the clubs and the speakeasies, and people are dancing. And the main character is a queer woman, and she used to be a thief, but then she became a perfume maker in Paris. But as the Nazis approach, she is tasked by a dancing girl to break into this house that used to be her dad's house until he was evicted by the Nazis, and find his perfume diary where he kept all of his secret recipes. And the problem with that, of course, is that there's now a very high-level Nazi living in this house, and she has to infiltrate and get to know him and earn his trust so she can find this perfume diary. It's very atmospheric. I just think it's a whole lot of fun, and their characters are tremendous. One of them is based on Josephine Baker. Think like Moulin Rouge set with the Nazis, and you kind of get a feel for this book.
The Bitter Taste of Murder. This book goes on sale next week. And actually, there is an event with Murder by the Book and the author. So you can see her next week on Thursday. This book is a wonderful sequel to Murder in Chianti, where you'll first meet Nico Doyle. He's a former New York City detective who lives now in his late wife's hometown in Italy. You can just pick up book 2, but book 1 is also quite good. In this book, he's helping solve a case with the death of a wine critic that no one really liked in the area. He lost control of his car, but an autopsy report shows that he was actually dead before he was ran off the road. So this is a very fun mystery. There's plenty of delicious food and beautiful scenery in Tuscany. There's action. It's a satisfying ending, and it's a good way to escape to Italy this summer because you're probably not going there, even if you wanted to.
Bummer. Yes. Emily.
So this one is by a young upstart author that y'all might have heard of. It's called A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins. It publishes the last day of August. It's pretty exciting. Anticipation for this is, as you'd expect, kind of crazy. The announcement already happened on Good Morning America, so you hopefully already have it on order at Murder by the Book. This is, Hawkins doing what Hawkins does. It's twists and it builds. There's deceit and revenge and murder. Starts with a young guy dead on a houseboat, but the story then centers around these 3 women who are sort of hitched throughout the book. There's Laura, who is the one-night stand who was last seen with the victim. There's Carla, his already grief-stricken aunt, and then there's Miriam, who's sort of this nosy neighbor who I think is my favorite character in the book, who also seems to be lying to the police every chance she gets, and sometimes for reasons that don't become clear till the end. To me, this is by far Hawkins' most layered story, and I think a real step up from even her sort of high standards. It's a driving read. It really grabs you. This is particularly exciting for this group for a lot of reasons, but especially exciting because Murder by the Book was one of the first group of people that really fell in love with Paula Hawkins, and Paula Hawkins loves Murder by the Book. This is way back when she wrote that little book about trains. So yeah, it's good community for her. Thank you.
And then for me, Peter Heller, the guide. Peter Heller wrote a book a few years ago called The River that was about a canoe trip in Canada that goes horribly awry. And I mention it because it is a bit of a thriller, but this book, The Guide, is a follow-up to that one. You don't have to have read The River to get into The Guide, but this one's much more of a thriller. And what Peter Heller does absolutely the best is nature writing. He used to work for National Geographic. He climbs all the mountains and fishes all the rivers, so he really knows his nature writing. But this is straight up thriller set in the very near future. It's set in Crested Butte, Colorado, and one of the characters who survives the river is back, Jack, and he's now working as a fishing guide in this extremely exclusive resort, and he's assigned to be the fishing guide for this pop singer, and she and he are fishing the river, but things get stranger and stranger as they realize they're under surveillance, and there are these people who are at the resort and they claim to be fishing, but they never actually go to the river, and it becomes creepier and creepier as you go along. This is one of those books that just builds and builds and builds, and then you think, oh my god, I can't believe I just read that.
I love Crested Butte. I would definitely read that just to read about Crested Butte. Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So you might recognize that author's name. She wrote Mexican Gothic, which was essentially a horror novel. She had written previous books that were successful, but this is really what made her a big name. And her new book is just as fantastic, but also completely unique and new. It's noir, it's a thriller, it's 1970s Mexico City. And you have a little bit of what was going on at the time with the government, the Mexican government, trying to suppress any political unrest. And then you have a few very compelling characters who on the surface maybe sound quite normal. A 30-year-old secretary, Maite, who's quite unhappy with her life, and her beautiful neighbor, Lenora, who has gone missing. And then there's this young guy, Elvis, who's this tough guy who works for the government, this group funded by the government who essentially suppress radicals, students especially. And Elvis and Maite kind of meet each other by both trying to track down Lenora. And there's all these dark secrets, and you find out the real reason for her disappearance. It's a very tight plot. And it's just a really engrossing read. So whether or not you read Mexican Gothic, this is very fun. Also, I just found out today that Murder by the Book will have signed stock. So that stock still has to come from the printer and a warehouse and make it to Houston safely and not have the delivery guy leave it outside in the rain. So as long as everything goes fine, we'll have that stock for you guys.
I like to think that I'm the beautiful neighbor that goes missing.
We would like you to go missing.
I can tell.
So it's funny. It's funny to follow up the Silvia Moreno Garcia book with this one by Amanda Giatisa, because Amanda, this is a debut novel, and everyone is comparing this one to what I think is one of the best books that come out in the past couple of years, Mexican Gothic. So these two authors, and maybe two authors to read together. They're still both young and have long careers ahead of them, so that's kind of cool. This is a debut thriller. And this one is about as scary as a book can get without me having to sleep with like the lights on for a month, which, you know, I scare easy. So that means it's just about right for anyone that likes dark thrillers, but maybe doesn't go for the real hardcore thriller horror titles, you know? So it's twisty and fun. It's a diverse perspective. It's murder. It's got multiple murders and a surprise, a really cool surprise. One of those things that happen at the end that sort of you finish page 275, and then you just flip right back to page 1 to see how it all happened and how they did all that throughout the book. You get a bunch of Sri Lankan culture. Amanda's the first. It's interesting. She's the first Sri Lankan woman to ever sign an international book deal ever, which is an odd thing. It's a cool thing for her. It's an odd thing to say, in 2021, but it's cool for her. It's got a white savior angle. It's a coming of age murder mystery, and it's just all wonderful. Oh, and Liz will like this. Amanda owns a chain of cookie shops in Sri Lanka, so maybe she'll send us some cookies.
Maybe. You just promised me cookies, so there is no maybe. Yeah. So. Revelator by Daryl Gregory. This is coming at the end of the month, and this book is creepy and weird, and I have a thing for gothic fiction. I absolutely love it, and that's what this book is. It's set in the Appalachians, and it's mostly set in the 1930s, so bootlegging's a big deal. World War II hasn't hit yet. People are poor, and it's this group of people living in this valley, and the valley is eventually going to be subsumed by Smoky Mountain National Park. But until then, these people have agreements with the government to live on the land until they perish, and then the government will take the land for the park. The problem is, in this creepy valley, there is this cave, and inside this cave is this spirit thing that they call Ghost Daddy, and it's this kind of Appalachian worshipping weird cave monster thing, where they're only a girl child from each generation is designated as the Revelator and can go down and talk to Ghost Daddy and get the messages from Ghost Daddy. This is creepy as hell. This is like Mexican Gothic, except, Appalachia. And there's some weird pig thing going on. But I absolutely loved it. Daryl Gregory actually grew up in this area of Eastern Tennessee, so he knows of which he writes. That said, if he knows of a real Ghost Daddy, I don't need to know that, because that's haunting and weird. So.
Does anyone else have
that jacket
that
is terrifying?
Ghost Daddy.
The jacket's terrifying.
I'm gonna need Ghost Daddy to not be a term that's used anymore.
I am gonna start calling you Ghost Mama. Yeah.
All right,
I thought the jacket's scary.
The jacket is scary. Liz wins for creepiest jacket, and I'm also creeped out by Ghost Daddy. So.
Yeah. Don't forget the pigs, because the pigs
too. Excellent. Perfect.
All right. The Last Duel. So this book jacket, speaking of jackets, is actually what's called a movie tie-in jacket. So it's connected to the upcoming movie that's coming out this October. But there's also another version of the paperback that has a different jacket. So if you see two in the store, that's why. This is an excellent medieval true crime story that has a lot of violence and drama and political scheming. And it's just very fun. It actually came out over a decade ago and now is becoming a big deal because of this movie that stars Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and Adam Driver and Jodie Comer, who I love from the TV show Killing Eve. It's 1396 France. It's the last sanctioned duel. It's like death by combat. And it's over this very serious accusation. A knight's wife has saying that she was raped by a squire. And it unfolds this whole thing. The really terrifying aspect for her, though, is that if her husband, the knight, doesn't win the duel, essentially that means she's a liar and is burned alive. So it's really compelling and interesting. It's all true. The author is a professor of medieval literature, and this is just something quite unique. There's not too many other books like this out there.
And then Ghost Daddy comes and kills them all.
Hopefully, right? So The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. is set for, I believe, a late September release. We got September 28th. I think it might have been just confirmed today that he'll have an event with Murder by the Book, and there will be signed copies, which is also very exciting. We all wanted more of Thursday Murder Club when that published last year, and Richard Osman went straight to work. And this book sort of starts exactly where that book leaves off. You've got Elizabeth, Joyce, Ron, and Ibrahim, who are the Thursday Murder Club. They're still kind of stoked after their first real life murder case, and are ready for a bit of downtime at the Cooper's Chase Retirement Village. But no, that's not going to happen because enter some strange visitor, Elizabeth's old friend.
Ghost Daddy.
What's that?
It's Ghost Daddy. No.
It's Elizabeth's ghost daddy, yes, and shows up and needs some help. He's apparently stolen some diamonds worth millions from some super violent folks, and he's trying really hard not to get killed. And then bodies start showing up dead. And Elizabeth, Joyce, Ron, and Ibrahim are not only trying to sort of catch the murderer, but trying really hard, again, not to get murdered themselves. The series is super fun. If you haven't read Thursday Murder Club, you should. It's coming out in paperback really soon. I think maybe next week, or it came out this week. There's already books 3 and 4 are already being worked on, and they're under contract. Steven Spielberg is making a movie about the whole thing, and it's just a joy. So if you're looking for, a really nice, smart, escapist sort of novel, this is definitely this series is going to be one that you're going to want to get into. Just a blast.
And now we get to my literary husband, and yes, I've told him that. Colson Whitehead, 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner. He has been on the cover of Time magazine, and he is just a genius, but he also is a lot of fun. And after writing 2 very serious literary fiction books, he's like, I want to have some fun. I used to be funny. So he wrote Harlem Shuffle, and this is an homage to writers like Chester Himes. It's set in the 1960s. It's about this guy named Ray in Harlem. There's a spoiler. And Ray runs a furniture store that's kind of mostly above board legal, but he has a cousin who comes in the back door, and every now and then Ray does favors for this cousin, including, helping to move jewelry through his contact in the Diamond District in New York. And then Ray gets drawn into this heist because of his cousin. This is fun. This is smart. This is not heavy-handed Colson Whitehead. This is just him having a blast. And I love the cover. I love him. He knows that I think he's my husband. He's not probably going to ever tour to Texas again because of that. But I adore him and this book. So.
An elderly lady must not be crossed. This goes on sale the first week in October. It's a slim little hardcover. I think it's like a $15 hardcover, so it's like a little gift size. And it's actually the follow-up to a bestseller. An elderly lady is up to no good, and it's perfect for anyone who likes their mysteries with a bit of dark humor and not too sweet. It's 6 linked stories that detail the murders that Maud, a very unusual woman with questionable motives, carries out over the years. Really great writing, and despite her terrible deeds, you're going to love Maud and be very curious about her plans. She ends the stories in South Africa, and she's, a globetrotting, serial killer. So a really fun read for the holidays and something a little bit different.
Man, everything you just said makes me so happy.
So the next book I'm talking about is Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. This is another example of why this fall is going to be just a dream for shoppers. I think there's so many great books, not just mine, but from a ton of publishers. It's just going to be a reader's paradise. And this one, I think, fits in there, and I think right up there at the top. Amor writes a different novel every time. Rules of Civility was so different from A Gentleman in Moscow, and The Lincoln Highway is much different than both of those. It's a hero's tale. It centers on two brothers who are traveling the Lincoln Highway to try to find some sort of family in sort of a broken world. It's got that, it's got that Don Quixote feel the Odyssey, got a little bit of the Watership Down in there. But I think what is really cool about this book is that it's nostalgic and it's brave and it's really interesting. And it's so, just go with me on this one. Our heroes have gone, they're sort of like on this perilous journey. They're taking on villains, finding saviors. They come close to tragedy like more than a few times. And now they come out the other end. They're stronger, they're smarter, they're more ready to take on anything that comes their way. And it just feels to me like what independent bookstores did over the past year and a half. And it feels like this book should be read as a celebration of sort of what places like Murder by the Book have done over the past year and a half to sort of continue to bring us books in tough times.
Hide by Craig Russell. So Craig Russell he wrote a book called The Devil Aspect that was terrific a few years ago, and this is a follow-up. The two are not related except in mood. And he is a wonder at kind of catching the dark underbelly of these places. Like the first book was set basically in Transylvania. This is set in Edinburgh in the 19th century. And Hyde, the main character, is a detective who's got kind of a severe looking face, and he's really good at his job. But he also has a condition where he keeps losing time because he has a form of epilepsy that he doesn't want anybody to know about. But he loses time and then comes to, and there happens to be this body next to him that's killed in a very ritualistic Celtic way. And so suddenly he is on the case. He's also possibly a suspect. He doesn't know what's happening. And all of this gets wrapped up into a Jekyll and Hyde type story. There's a lot going on here, but it's just a pure joy to read. And it, like, again, creepy. I love me some creepy. So.
Diamond and the Eye by Peter Lovesey. This goes on sale in mid-October. So he's been around forever. This author is a legend. This series involves a chief superintendent, Peter Diamond. He lives in Bath, England, which is also just a fascinating place to set a story. And he's this experienced detective who really isn't interested in changing his ways. In this latest book, you have an antiques dealer who has disappeared, and Diamond is being forced to receive the help of a private investigator who he would describe as Philip Marlowe wannabe to solve the case. So it's a great mystery, but it's also, plenty of wit and humor. The author describes his own books as whodunits, and this is just the perfect whodunit.
I'm pretty sure Ghost Daddy done it.
So following the legendary Peter Lovesey is another legend in John le Carré. He's regarded as one of the greatest spy novelists of all time. I think most people would put him as the greatest spy novelist of all time. He's certainly a household name. Following his unfortunate death last year, this will be his last novel. But what a gem he left us on. Silverview is John doing what he's always done best, which is talking about that secret world that just sort of lives right underneath our noses, but we never see, the spy world. This one centers around Julian Lonsley, who quit his fancy job in the city, set out to the country to run a small bookshop in an English seaside town. But only a few months into this new life, Julian's evening is disrupted by a visitor Edward, then sort of spies and lies and danger in a small town that's not so ready for what is about to happen to them, what's about to hit them. Silverview, it's the story is sort of like this innocent place that is instantly hit with this really weird experience, and you get sort of this battle between public duty and sort of private morals. Le Carré is, the great chronicler of our age, and he finishes his career with this fast, tight espionage thriller, but also with his sort of signature look at humanity. It's really a special book, and might be a perfect one for a heartfelt gift this season.
The Survivors. So this is just, I love this. And this is the book that when all the sales reps got to talking, you either loved it or you hated it. It's one of those divisive books. And I'm in the I loved it category. This is the story of three boys who are at a lake house with their parents, and it's in Scandinavia. And it's one summer, they spend this summer at this lake house, and they are just kids playing, but there's tension underneath with their parents. And some of the things that they're doing, or you start thinking about, like, that's not what you would do with your kids, but okay, yeah, make the 7-year-old swim out to this buoy that's way too far out. So that's part of the story. The alternating chapters are the three boys, now men, coming back together for the first time to go back to this lake house. And it's told in reverse chronological order on that. So you're slowly unraveling what happened. And this book has a twist at the end that, think like Sixth Sense kind of, holy crap, what did I just read? And I mean, it delivers. I think it's a slow burn that just kind of beats you over the head at the end in the best possible way.
Anne Perry, A Christmas Legacy. This goes on sale the first week in November. It's her latest Christmas novella. She is a prolific, talented English writer who I would argue probably has the most jaw-dropping Wikipedia page of all the authors we're talking about tonight. She writes historical mysteries, and this is just a really fun holiday mystery. It's set in London in the late 1800s. You have the main character is Gracie. She's someone who thought she was done being a maid, and a friend comes to her and asks for her help after she's been fired from a house because she started, I guess, being too aware, too outspoken about what she was observing in that home. And so Gracie gets hired in the house to figure out what's happening to the elderly woman who's living there with a younger couple. So just a fun holiday mystery.
I hope somebody dies. You're welcome.
This is the Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis, and someone dies in this one, so Liz will be happy. This one is going to come out in that magical and mythical time of 2022, which is when everything will all get figured out and everyone will be safe and everything will be lovely. At least that's what I've been told. This is Fiona Davis doing what Fiona Davis does. She's a wonderful storyteller. I've enjoyed all of her books. Her recipe is, a dual storyline, New York City based, historical, especially in terms of the history of the women's liberation movement, and always centering on a New York City architectural iconic space. And for Liz, there's always a murder. This one takes place, the first part, in 1919 with Lillian, also known as Angelica, and then 50 years later with Veronica Weber. They're both models of a sort, and both sort of living the outwardly perfect New York City life, and both sort of inwardly wanting. The action takes place largely at the Frick Mansion, which is a Gilded Age palace turned museum, which sounds like an incredible place. Davis, she's just so much fun because although she does have that formula, none of the characters sort of pop over into different books. She writes a new book each time, and her research and her love of architecture just jumps right off the page. The murders were always interesting, and they're always solved in really interesting ways. So you can't go wrong with Fiona Davis.
Okay, The Anomaly. So I can't imagine ever presenting a book to the Murder by the Book crowd that also won the Prix Goncourt, which is the French Pulitzer. But then this book comes along. I absolutely love this book. If you were fans of things like the TV show Lost, this is the book you have to read. It's a paperback original for the US. The translation is flawless. And the deal here is it's about an airplane full of passengers that flies from Paris to JFK in New York. And right before they get to New York, they hit horrible turbulence and hail is pelting the plane, and they're not sure they're even going to make it. But then they get through the turbulence and land, and everything's fine, and people go on their way. And then in June, there's a plane that's coming from Paris to the United States, and it hits terrible turbulence. And when they get through the turbulence, they're trying to land at JFK, and the towers keeps diverting them because they can't figure out what's going on. So ultimately they end up landing at an Air Force base and being quarantined because it is the exact same plane, same passengers, same call letters. It's the same plane, except it's 2.5 months later. And all of this is told through the perspectives of the various character or people on the plane, as well as the investigators who are trying to figure out what this is. It's trippy. It's short. It's so well done. Like the first chapter is narrated by a guy who's an assassin who sneaks back to France, because he doesn't want to get caught by the people investigating this weird anomaly. I absolutely love this. It's probably my favorite book for the fall. I think it's just one of those books you just have to read and then reread. So.
And finally, Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone by Diana Gabaldon. This goes on sale in November, so right before Thanksgiving. It's the 9th book in the Outlander series. The Outlander series focuses on this great couple, Jamie and Claire Fraser. If you've never heard of the Outlander series, it's best-selling historical fiction that has a bit of the supernatural because there is time travel. And there's a lot of war and violence and adventure and plenty of epic love stories, primarily 2 really big love stories. It's also a really good TV show that's in its 6th season. So this is one of the most exciting books that we have coming out in the fall. And they are very big books, but in my opinion, worth the commitment. Thank you so much. I think that wraps us up, you guys, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Hi, that does wrap you up. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I was about to put a snarky comment about John said that his mother-in-law is dying for the new Outlander book, and I was going to say I was dying for Sam Hugan, the star of the TV show, but I was typing that as I realized that we have wrapped up. So there we go. That's my comment. We've had a lot of commentary in the comments here on Facebook. Tons of great recommendations. We have tons of signed copies. We have some events coming up. So some really terrific things happening. Thank you all so much for being here, for telling us about your picks. As I said earlier, I mean, it is your job to tell us about great books, but because we know you so well, we trust you, which is a different situation than everyone. Or we trust everyone except Liz and her ghost daddy situation.
That's valid.
Yeah.
I'm sure that book's great, just dark and creepy. So Yeah. But there's some things that I can't wait for on this list too that I haven't read yet. The new Fiona Davis, especially. John and I both love The Frick, so can't wait to read this one. I'm going to go ahead and sign us off for the night. Speaking of Penguin Random House authors, we're going to be back on here tomorrow at 1:00 Central with Martin Walker, who is an absolute delight. And we have signed copies of the new Bruno book available. So come back tomorrow, 1 Central, if you really just want a treat. He is so charming and well-spoken and talks about his book so beautifully. So anyway, we'll be back on here at 1 with that. Thanks to Brian, Liz, and Emily. Thanks to John for doing the PowerPoint for behind the scenes. And we are all going to say good night. Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.